were not going to participate in the electoral process. And I said, no, democracy says that you have a right to go out and choose a candidate, and in order to do that, you need two candidates running. And that's when I decided that I was going to step into this space. And I got a lot of no's and what are you doing? And oh my God, don't do that. And the more I kept hearing that message, the more I felt that I needed to pursue this path, because voters, absolutely, the voters in District 27 needed to be represented by a Democrat. They're predominantly Democrat district in 27, and they had someone who were, using their votes as Democrats to, fulfill the wishes of Republicans. Mm-hmm. They were supporting.
You were saying too that the politics in Jamaica, what you were familiar with, is quite different from here. How so?
It is different because, again, it's a no holds bar in Jamaica. When the political campaign, just the whole sense of the process is pretty similar. And I guess, but they're not as diplomatic in Jamaica as they are here. So that is different for me, because I had to learn in this space to be, I learned a lot of tact and diplomacy when operating in this space, which is quite different from Jamaica in that respect, even though, again, the systems are pretty similar in how they choose candidates and run their race. It's a dog-eat-dog world in Jamaica. And you are milk bones out there. Here you have to exercise tact and diplomacy, which I've come to learn to do. So,
thank you so much, Rose. Sending it back to you all.
That's Rose Bonnick, who has not only defeated Sabrina Lamar, the president of the legislature, back in the June primary, but an animated Rose Bonnick on election night. And that is a key Democratic pickup, because that would effectively flip the legislature if they can hold their other races. So, there's I think a lot of excitement for the moment. We're monitoring to see if there are speeches and our colleague Brian Sharp says no movement to the stage yet, but we're expecting perhaps Sandra Dorley over at Republican headquarters, among others. And I think we can go to, is it Brian? Brian's there. Brian and Raquel Stephen, of course. Brian Sharp, Raquel Stephen, over to you.
Oh, I was just making my voice a little deeper so we can assume it is Brian Sharp, Evan. Well, I mean, like you said, we're all just... Thank you. I'll be here all night. So we are anticipating some speeches. People are starting to trickle into the grand ballroom area around the podium, in front of the podium, because we were told that District Attorney Sandra Dorley, who ran unopposed, will be giving a speech pretty soon. So people are beginning to gather around the podium. So we're anticipating the speeches to begin in about a few minutes or so. And then we'll probably go live if we can. But that's the mood right now. Not much cheers. Everyone's just pretty... Yep. The silence is a little loud in here, but we are anticipating some speeches very soon.
All right. Thank you, Raquel Stephen, not Brian Sharp. And Raquel says she'll be there all night. She actually probably will, because we're going to be working all night until we get the results. And Scott Feibush, our colleague, has been over in the newsroom piling up some of the results, and he is now bringing in his laptop and doing his best Dave Wasserman or... Who's MSN? Steve Kornacki. Wow. I mean, is that what reference. You aspire to be now? Is that you?
He's a geek. I'm a geek. I could think of worse comparisons, honestly.
Randy Gorman?
No, I just want to say we do have a lot of those very local races, and Penfield's got an interesting situation going on over there. That was the situation where the former supervisor, Marie Sinti, had resigned earlier this year after some family health issues. Debbie Draw briefly was interim supervisor. And now we have a race there between candidates Jeff Leanhouse, a Republican, Democrat Tiffany Rice. And what's going on over there, Scott Feibush?
So it looks like the supervisor race is I'm not quite ready to call this, but Leanhouse is ahead by about a 4 percentage point margin. We've seen all of the early results come in, of course, which lean heavily Democratic. We're waiting on about a third of the same-day results from Penfield. Does not look like that's quite going to close for Tiffany Rice for the supervisor race. However, over on the town council side of things, that's looking like a very, very close race. We are literally within no more than about, do the quick math here, about 25, 30 votes between number 2 and number 3 in this race for 2 seats. So you've got Kevin Barry and Linda Teglash, the Democrats, Alan Hetzke and David Bast on the Republican side of things. And right now, the 2 leading vote getters are one of each, Hetzke and Teglash, but it is incredibly close, and there are still about a third of the same day votes in. So way, way, way too close to make any kind of call on that yet.
Yeah, Scott, this is the part of the evening where I struggle because you start wanting to make calls or feel like something's definitive, but early vote always favors the Democrats. Day of favors the Republicans. Turnout is always the question. What are the races that you look at and say, this still feels like it's up in the air to me?
That one definitely up in the air. Another one that I've been following pretty closely tonight, that family court race, where interestingly enough, and actually she just pulled ahead very slightly, but Dandria Ruhlman, who's been the longest serving incumbent with 2 full terms and then potentially 8 years ahead on a third before retirement, she was actually in last place in vote count all night. She has pulled just barely ahead of Maroon Ajaka, but behind still the other incumbent, Christine Demo Vasquez, the Republican, and Maria Cubelos-Reed, who is far and away the leading vote getter right now. On the Democratic side, again, not quite enough votes in to make a full call on that. But that one is starting to close. The county executive races we've been talking about, if not a total runaway for Adam Bellow, it doesn't look like there are enough votes left same day to help Mark Cassini in that one, at least that I can see it all. And then, Rhonda quite obviously been following very closely that race there. And Andre Evans, even as those same-day numbers have been coming in, which you would think would favor Roy Fitzpatrick, the Republican, he's maintained that edge there in Arundequoit. So looking at that kind of closely, that's about 54-46 right now for Evans, and about 60% of the same-day vote in at this point. So looking at that, and then obviously County Ledge. Let me just pull up the latest numbers there because we just got updates on a couple of these races. So that other Arundequoit race along Carbone, that's running about 57-42 for the Democrat, Dave Long, and we're about half and half with same-day voting that's in on that. So it's starting to look there, too, like there may not be enough votes left same day for Joe Carbone to pull that out.
That number should narrow. That margin should narrow from 58-42. The question is how much?
Yeah, the question is just simply, are there enough raw votes left?
Yeah.
We had this year, it was a largish proportion. As we had heard earlier in the week from our elections commissioners, that a fair number of the vote that traditionally would have been same day has shifted to early voting. Anecdotally, all of my family voted early this year. I don't know why. Everybody just wanted to get it done with, I guess.
Because you had 8 days of opportunity. Yeah. The weather was pretty good,
yeah.
and you knew that the lines would not be long.
Yep.
That's pretty compelling.
I want to add one thing to what Scott was saying about the county ledge, and we were just talking about Mel Callan kind of being, if not a perennial, certainly a candidate, at least a few times in the past. She's making a bit of a contest right now. Not all the districts in yet, but as more votes come in, Republican Paul Dondorfer getting a bit of a run for his, so to speak, money there. 52% for Dondorfer right now, about 48% for Callan. So a bit of a race there over in the 9th District in Monroe County.
Yeah. Now, that would be a big surprise. Democrats would tell you that, too, just because of the history electorally over there, Scott Feibush. Although, they're trying to be competitive. You heard Mel Callan. This was interesting, Scott. Mel Callan told us earlier tonight in a live interview tonight on WXXI that she is proud to be part of a slate that for the first time in years, Democrats are running in every single one of the 29 districts. And they're not just running, they don't just have people on there. They're running and trying to win.
There has been energy this year. Again, to bring it back to Penfield, there were more events this year. There was more get out the vote energy there from the Penfield Democratic Party than we have seen in some years in the past. And I want to get back to Arundequoit, too, because I happened to early vote at the Arundequoit Community Center, and it was a random, Thursday morning or Friday morning that I went over to vote there, and I actually was surprised at how many people were there, a 10-something on a rainy Friday morning, casting their votes in at the new Skyview Community Center there. So there has been this energy. I'll be interested to see what the final turnout numbers turn out to be, because I think it's going to be maybe a smidge higher than we've seen in the past. And right now those numbers are still waiting on some new numbers out of Arundequoit. There's still, out of 71 districts, we have 40 in so far. So that will probably be the one that kind of keeps us up for a little bit here yet.
Well, we've got nowhere else to be. I hope you're settled in with live coverage from WXXI here. And Randy, am I missing something? Is there anywhere else we have to be? I guess we're still waiting for the waiting for speeches is always fascinating.
Well, that's the thing. And normally, most of the big speeches are, let's face it, even though TV news has changed a lot of the candidates like to wait for the 11 p.m. news. I don't even know. I'm not assuming at this point that Mr. Bellow and Mr. Assini want to, definitely either declare victory or concede. But I think probably by 11 o'clock, they will be in that position. And again, they like to kind of wait for the 11 o'clock news because they know there are more folks watching then. But we are supposed to hear from Sandra Dorley, the Republican DA, who at one point was a Democrat some years ago, but we understand she's going to make a speech soon from Republican headquarters. We are waiting for that over at the DoubleTree Hilton, and when that happens, we will be going live to that. It's not happened yet, but it should happen pretty soon.
Well, and, we'll try to put a final point on this interesting story out of Geneva tonight, which, I've been getting texts from people who live in Geneva, and there's a lot of strong opinions on this very interesting set of races there. And so we'll check in with Kelly Walker, our colleague at WEOS. I think we're due for our only break here of the hour here. And so why don't we do that? And then when we come back here, we are much closer to getting something more definitive as we follow Monroe County Executive, the Monroe County Legislature, and these very interesting town and city races that are happening tonight. No down years in election. A lot going on. Coming right back on election night with live coverage from WXXI.
Investigators say a Texas prison inmate attacked a guard. Witnesses say in response, the guards beat him so badly he's now in a coma.
What about the culture that promotes this type of incident, this type of action towards inmates?
What about the culture? Is it too few staff for too many inmates? On the next morning edition from NPR News.
Tomorrow morning at 5 on WXXI.
There are a lot of ways to connect with WXXI News. You can tune into AM 1370 or FM 88.5 or listen on our mobile app. You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. You can stream us online or listen on your smart speaker. We're here for you, wherever and whenever you listen.
5 years ago, a deadly wildfire nearly wiped the town of Paradise, California off the map. Most of the town still hasn't been rebuilt.
It's a ton of work, but considering it's only been 5 years and we had a pandemic in the middle of that, what we've accomplished is just a miracle.
Why disaster recovery takes so long on the next All Things Considered from NPR News.
Tomorrow afternoon at 4 on WXXI.
And live coverage continuing now from WXXI News. Evan Dawson with Randy Gorman, WXXI News Director, and we've got our colleagues Jeremy Mole and Gino Finelli working tonight. Scott Feibush manning the data, Mike Black, Megan Mack, and then just a whole team of folks I'm not mentioning who are out at campaign headquarters tonight. And if you are a Democrat in Monroe County, at this moment, you're feeling very good. You want to see the rest of these votes counted. But the numbers, the margin for Adam Bellow, the county executive, is so large at this point that it would take monstrous numbers for the Republican Mark Assini to overcome this deficit. I can't sit here and say, Scott Feibush, it's impossible. I don't know if you're close to saying it's impossible, but Adam Bellow looks like he's got a very good chance to be the first ever Democrat reelected as Monroe County executive.
I mean, very bluntly, he is ahead of Mark Assini right now, 62,000 votes to 38,000 votes. I think we can say pretty confidently, given the size of the early vote this year, given that close to 3/4 of all of the same-day voting is in, there very simply are not 24,000 votes remaining out there. And even if there were, they would have to go 100% to Mark Assini. And a fair number of those votes are coming from city districts that, of course, lean heavily Democratic. So, no, I do not at this point see any path for Marcassini to defeat Adam Bellow based on these numbers.
All right, so not an official call, but moving in that direction. For the Monroe County Legislature, again, we've covered that pretty well. We've got to get more of the vote total in, but if you look at where the votes are coming from and when they are coming from, it's a pretty similar story. Republicans in the most important districts for the legislature would have to have a big surge in the final counting here to win. Not impossible in these races, but we have to say at this point Democrats are feeling good, Scott.
Absolutely. The 16th district race that we've been following, Dave Long, Joe Carbone, there's about 800 votes between them. And again, probably not 800 total votes left at this point to be counted. And again, they'd have to go very, very heavily for Joe Carbone to turn that over there. The ones that are closer than that, let me bring up the latest in that 9th district there. Still waiting for some more numbers there. Paul Dondorfer, the Republican, ahead of Mel Callan, the Democrat, by almost exactly 200 votes right now. So that conceivably could still go either way. I think we'll be watching those numbers pretty closely. Another set of numbers that I've been looking at from our neighbors off to the west in Erie County. There was that highly publicized race for county executive there. Where'd those numbers go? There they are. Mark Palancar's the incumbent Democrat facing off against a very, very conservative Republican, Chrissy Casilio, who's been closely tied to the MAGA movement and the Trump campaign. And it's been all Mark all day, both early voting and election day. And that race is basically over. It's about 59% against 40% there. So not a huge surprise in the outcome. Maybe a little bit of a surprise, in terms of what those numbers are. And if you are a down ticket, more traditional Republican in Erie County, that may have dragged you down a little bit today.
Well, Randy Gorman, we do have reporters out live at various headquarters. We're going to be checking with them a little bit later in this half hour here. And when we hear from the various voices that you will hear at these headquarters, you will hear from them. I think it's too early to be definitive, although I will say this about Patrick Riley, who we just heard earlier tonight on WXXI News. He is the new Monroe County Republican Party chair. He was also running for county legislature.
Yeah, and he kind of took a backseat with his campaign.
That's
said,
right.
Yeah, I'm not going to run actively because I want to run these other campaigns.
Yeah, he was running against Susan Hughes Smith, who is an incumbent Democrat from Brighton. And when Pat Riley got the chance to become the party chair, he essentially said, okay, not likely to win this seat, not going to actively campaign too much, going to work on winning county races. It is too early to say here that that has not worked out. But if this doesn't flip, that's a tough opening night for Pat Riley, who, I look forward to talking to on connections and in future programs. And I think it's a hard job for anybody, but that would be a tough night.
Yeah, I mean, let's face it, we know, at least in recent years, not only has Monroe County become, in terms of party registration, more Democratic, the county GOP, to put it mildly, has been in a rebuilding phase. I mean, they... I don't know exactly how much they have in their coffers, but they have not been raising the kinds of money that the Dems have. Of course, Democrats have, a Democrat as county executive. But, he's trying to do what he can. But aside from whatever political persuasions are out there, I think a lot of it may have to do with just not having the funds and the structure right now, and have to see how he does over the next couple of years.
Scott Feibusch?
Some new numbers from Penfield from that supervisor race that we have been following. We are at about 3/4 of the same-day vote-in. Oh, wait, now we are at a little more than 3/4 of the same-day vote-in. It is still close, but definitely leaning in one direction, and that is Republican Jeff Leanhoutz, who is now ahead of Tiffany Rice, the Democrat, by about 300 votes. And there are only 5 districts out of 46 that are yet to report, so it's not necessarily going to be a nail-biter, but it's going to be very close. And I think if you are a Penfield Democrat looking to kind of see a buildup of enthusiasm in the town going forward, I think it's probably a decent-looking night for you there. Let me just look at the latest town council numbers. And the latest town council numbers are kind of where they've been hanging to. All of these 4 candidates are within no more than about 250 votes of each other. One Democrat, Linda Teglash, one Republican, Alan Hetzke, still leading for the 2 seats that are up, but it's close.
Okay. Yeah, and I'm trying to kind of keep up with a number of town races here, looking around the region, just kind of keeping our eyes scanned on a lot of the different stories that are developing. We always try to be very careful because results can flip, especially with early results coming in first. But I'm aware that a lot of listeners and folks on social media are looking at the Monroe County executive race saying that looks like it's over. There's some celebrating happening from Democrats. Let's give that the space it needs, and then I'm sure we're going to hear from the candidates. You will hear from Adam Bellow live on the air tonight.
Yeah, and I would be surprised if they didn't both make speeches in the 11 to 11:30 timeframe.
Yeah, and Mark Cassini, I'm sure he will. Like I said earlier tonight, Mark Cassini has told us that this is likely his last race. He is no stranger to electoral politics, some wins, some losses. He was a member of the Monroe County Legislature. He was the Gatestown supervisor, but he wanted to be in Congress, ran a couple times, nearly defeated Louise Slaughter, came within, just less than 1 percentage point, about 1,000 votes, just under 1,000 votes. But then lost by a bigger margin in his second race. And so this was it. They put a lot of work into this, and he felt really good about this going in. If the numbers turn out to be a blowout, we all need time to process things, but it's going to say some interesting things about local electoral politics that I need smarter people than me to explain.
One thing I think that will kind of help define that race is going to be the turnout in Arundequite. We have some updated numbers there now in that race for town supervisor. Roy Fitzpatrick, the incumbent Republican, has pulled up a little bit closer to Andre Evans, the Democrat, as we get more same-day vote in. Right now, it's 51.5 to 48.5, and we're only waiting on 12 more districts to
out of how many?
Come in there out of 71.
Wow.
So it is
very close.
It is absolutely, that one I would say is way too close to call, which means we got to check also on that 16th District County Ledge race. Not as close. Oh, look at this. Okay, I think we can make a call in the 16th District County Ledge race. We have all of the numbers in now.
Which district?
On same-day voting. This is 16th District, Long and Carbone. 55.5% for Long, 44.5% for Carbone, and there is nothing left except maybe a few absentee ballots.
A double-digit win.
A double-digit win, and that one we can call. I'm confident to say that's over.
I want to kind of just put a pin in why this one really, really matters. 2 years ago, Dave Long, a newcomer to county politics, ran against the president of the legislature, Joe Carbone, a Republican, and Dave Long won. Joe Carbone has been planning this comeback for 2 years, and the party put a lot into it. And Joe Carbone's very, very well known there. And he not only did not win, he got blown out. In a race that had Carbone won, he could have been the next president of the legislature and flipped it back or held it for Republicans effectively. He didn't do it. That's a big, big result. For Democrats, it's going to be interesting to see if Andre Evans gets the same result. I mean, his numbers aren't quite the same margin, so it's tighter in the supervisor race there.
You remember we're talking about
are all those in, or those are not all in?
No, we're still waiting on some of those. Remember, we're talking about the town of Arundequite versus
thank you, Scott Feibush.
Versus one. Going back to the 9th district, also
not all the same town. Thank you.
We have all but 2 districts in now in that 9th district race. Paul Dondorfer's still ahead. Wait. More. Nope, still the same number. Still waiting for 2 districts. There is just under 200 votes separating Paul Dondorfer and Mel Callan out of a total of about 7,000 votes cast so far in that race. So, again, way too close to call in that one. Let's go back and just see if we got one more result on Arundequite here. 1 second. Still waiting on those last 12 districts. So still 48 to 51 Andre Evans, but that one is still too close to call. I am even more confident now looking at county executive. We're now down to fewer than 100 districts left out of 929. There is no space for Mark Cassini to win this. He is behind now by 35,000 votes against Adam Bellow.
That's pretty definitive. Okay, so barring the strangest result in electoral history, Adam Bellow is going to be the first Democrat reelected Monroe County executive. And Democrats are now starting to wonder if they can feel really good about local electoral politics. It's been a long time sort of in the county wilderness for Democrats. Now they've likely won the county executive seat 2 terms in a row. And now they're on the verge of doing something with the legislature that they haven't been able to do. That's pretty remarkable. And for Stephen DeVay, the Democratic Party chair, you know, he is no stranger to the fact that in electoral politics, you're going to have different factions of your own party. You're going to have people who are more progressive, more centrist. And he has sort of waded through all of that and looks like, for the moment, election night could be massive for the Dems. But we're not quite there yet fully. If you're just joining us, Evan Dawson with Scott Feibush, Randy Gorman, Megan Mack, Mike Black, Gino Finelli, Jeremy Mull, and a team of reporters at the various headquarters, also at WEOS. I mean, we're covering the region tonight, and a lot of storylines right now.
Yeah, we're going to, Jasmine, if you're ready, we're going to go over to the Hyatt Democratic headquarters, I believe is with one of the city court judge candidates. Jasmine?
Yes, hi. Thanks so much. I'm very excited to be here. The room is filling up so much. I'm here with Constance Patterson. How are you tonight?
I'm good. How are you?
What is at stake for you right now?
So this was, I ran in the primary with Judge Elliott, and so, we both won. But we still had someone on the Working Families Party line. So it was, nerve-wracking, but, I'm excited that Democrats, came out to vote, and it appears that, myself and Judge Elliott have won again. So I'm excited to start my term in January.
Well, congratulations, City Court Judge. So what will be your priorities? Like, what are you hoping to accomplish this time?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things that I would like to accomplish. So, and I said this on the campaign trail, community safety is huge right now, but also providing people with the resources that they need, that they may not have access to. And so that's what I'm excited to bring to the bench. New opportunities, new resources, new ways for people to get the resources that they need.
What would you say are the biggest challenges facing Rochester today, and how might you approach them?
I think the biggest challenges would be people working together, right? And making sure that, when you provide someone resources, or, they're standing in front of you, being charged with a crime, and, those are allegations at that point, who's there to help? And so getting people together to see what the real issues are and how we can really help and assist someone. And I think that's a challenge, you know what I mean? Because everybody has to be part of the resolution. Everybody has to be part of helping people.
Are there any challenges regarding the courtroom operating impartially? Is this something that you think about, and how you might be able to address issues of equity in Rochester?
Yeah, I mean, I think there definitely are issues in regards to equity. And I think that if we were to ignore that, then we're not doing justice. We have to be able to point out the inequity in city court, you know what I mean, and balance that and call it out for what it is, and so that's exactly what I plan to do.
So if I talk to you 1 year from right now, what will you have accomplished, do you hope, that you would be most excited about?
So as I said, community safety is huge. I was appointed by the mayor back in October, and I've been in the position for the last 4 weeks. And so I've started that, making sure that our community is safer, and I will continue to do that a year from now. But again, also talking to individuals. I've had the opportunity to sit in court already and have conversations with people about what's going on in their life and how can I, as a city court judge, assist them. And that's really what I've been wanting to do, really talk to people, because I feel like we're not talking enough to people, and we pass people through the system, and I want that to stop happening. And so I want to be a part of that change, and I want to continue on when I start my term in January to continue to do that even into the years to come.
So yes, thank you so much. I could talk to you forever. I have so many questions. I really appreciate it, and congratulations.
Thank you very much.
All right, Jasmine Singer over at the Democratic headquarters tonight at the Doubletree Hilton. Let's move over to Republican headquarters down. I'm sorry, that was actually at the Hyatt downtown. Let's move over to Republican headquarters over at the Hilton on Jefferson Road. And Brian Sharp and Raquel Stephen, what do we have?
Well, we're still here waiting for some speeches. As you might imagine, not a lot of celebrating going on tonight. Folks are, sort of some long faces. Not a good night for Republicans. They've got, they wanted to hold the ledge, and that appears to be out of reach. So we're just waiting for them to. They're going to start with Sandra Dorley. I've seen her walking around a bit. We've got some of the folks who maybe were in other uncontested races, but so far, not what they were hoping for.
Yeah, and obviously Sandra Dorley, a longtime politician, has been in office for quite some time as Monroe County DA. A long time ago used to be a Democrat as well, but in any case, she's a Republican now. Democrats decided not to run anyone against her. And, it could be various reasons for that, I suppose, Evan Dawson, in terms of just looking at logistics. Maybe they didn't want to, bring out, more people who would vote perhaps against Adam Bell. It's hard to say what the logistics are there, but Sandra's been a pretty strong candidate over the last few years.
Well, I'm trying to figure out just how many seats the Democrats could end up with. Scott Feibusch, what are you looking at right now?
With a giant asterisk on this, because we only have about 2/3 of the same-day vote, which is going to lean potentially much more Republican given where this is. But the 18th county legislature district, which is primarily Perrington, and I believe part of Penfield, Lystra McCoy, the Democrat, is ahead of Sean Delahanty, the Republican right now, by better than 5 percentage points. It is about a 350 vote differential. And there are 13 districts not reporting yet out of 32, so these are still numbers that could and very likely will shift and make it closer. But if you are an East Side Democrat looking at these, I think you've got to be a little bit surprised. When I showed these numbers to you, Evan, a moment ago, your eyes got pretty wide.
Yeah, they did, and just I'm in touch with 3 or 4 different people, party politics. Everybody in both sides are telling me, based on the numbers Scott just read, they would be surprised if Delahanty doesn't win, but it's closer than everybody thought it would be. And I guess we have to wait and see. That's going to be close. But Democrats are very confident right now. They're going to have 15 real seats and a legislature majority.
And I just want to flip over to Ontario County briefly. I know Kelly Walker from our affiliate there, WEOS, standing by in Geneva. Interesting mayor's race. What happened there, Kelly?
Hey, Randy. I think we're still looking at a win for incumbent Mayor Valentino. He's currently up 87 votes. And to offer some clarification for our earlier conversation, there are no further early ballots out there. There are 97 absentee ballots still out. Now, of course, not all of those may come in. So technically, there are 97 votes still waiting to be counted. They may not all come in, and it's an 87-vote lead. So things could happen, but I would say at this point it's fairly safe to say Mayor Valentino will hold his seat.
And looking at that race, I've been in touch with a number of residents just in the last hour who tell me that they feel like what has happened there, Kelly, just to kind of recap for listeners about this very kind of unusual, strange race. An incumbent mayor, Steve Valentino, likely to win, but he ran as a Democrat 4 years ago. He ran as a Republican this year because the local Democrats chose a different Democrat for this race. That was Jan Regan. And Valentino tells me he's still a Democrat, but he does kind of I think he positions himself as kind of a centrist Democrat.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, Kelly, what I'm hearing from people in Geneva who wanted to see a change there, who voted for Jan Regan, was they feel like that Geneva is still kind of caught up in a lot of the culture war issues that we've seen in a lot of places, and that the Republican Party knew that it couldn't run its own candidates and win, and so they tried to grab onto some so-called centrist Democrats and run as Republicans, and that they have been pretty successful tonight. Is that a good analysis?
I think it's a fair analysis. I think the thing that my big takeaway from this right now is really the story is the at-large candidates. two of the most polarizing candidates to run for re-election tonight are currently trailing two of the challengers. And these are candidates who have been kind of at the forefront of, as you would describe, culture wars. They are within a very, very tight margin. So this is an instance where if half of those absentee ballots come in, that could have a significant impact on the at-large candidates. Now, one of the most polarizing candidates, Bill Peeler in Ward 2, did win handily. But I would say that really, in the end, we are still going to be looking at a very different city council and governmental structure in Geneva when this election is over. Very few incumbents are going to return. And at least my analysis would be that the people of Geneva are tired of a council that is defined largely by conflict.
Kelly Walker from WEOS in Geneva, thank you for the reporting and the coverage tonight. Our colleague down there, always appreciate it, Kelly.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for all the work you're doing tonight as well, and everybody.
One of the best. Kelly Walker in Geneva with WEOS. Randy Gorman, what's next here?
I think we're going to go right over to Republican headquarters, even though she was unopposed. We want to hear from the DA, Sandra Dorley. Brian Sharp, is she ready to talk there?
Oh, I think we just lost the feed for the moment, so let's make sure that we get it back up here. And once we do, again, as Randy mentioned, the district attorney, the Republicans will claim victory in that one because they didn't have an opponent. And Democrats didn't feel like they could field a candidate. In fact, I asked County Executive Adam Bellow when he was on Connections if he was disappointed that his party didn't run a DA candidate to challenge Sandra Dorley. His response was, he hadn't thought much about it, but he thinks she's done a good job, and that that it wasn't a priority for him. Scott Feibusch, with his margin of victory tonight, he's one of the de facto heads of the party now.
Yeah, it's interesting. Some of these races where there was no competition, there are a lot of fascinating what ifs. I'm still looking at these numbers from Parrington, and the big caveat here is we still don't have all the districts in, maybe 2/3 of the same-day votes. We're still waiting on a bunch of it. Karen Hanna, the Republican town supervisor there, ran unopposed and obviously has won re-election there. But then you look at the down-ticket races, Gary Muldoon, a familiar Democratic name, on the east side of the county, winning very handily for town justice there right now, again, with some of the numbers not in. And the two Democrats who were up for town council in Parrington, pretty far ahead of Republican Shauna Sartori. And you really kind of wonder, what might have happened in some of these races that were left uncontested. We're waiting right now primarily for the P-towns. We're waiting for numbers in Parrington. We're waiting for Pittsford. We're waiting for Penfield. And those last few numbers out of, wait, we have a run to quite. We have a run to quite, and with no more districts left to report. So all that's left now are potentially absentees or other challenged ballots. Andre Evans with 52%, the Democratic challenger. Rory Fitzpatrick, the incumbent one-term Republican, with 48%. So it looks like a flip at the top in a run to quite tonight.
Wow. That is, that's not necessarily the biggest surprise. That's a town that's seen, pretty close politics over recent years. And Andre Evans, a very respected and well-known local person, has a military background and career, has done a lot of work on a lot of different fronts. And obviously, Rory Fitzpatrick, well-known. So
I was going to say, you're talking about two people with a lot of charisma in town.
Exactly right. Exactly right. So just a very interesting race there. And I don't think it would be categorized as a huge surprise. It's just, unseating an incumbent is not easy in electoral politics. So that's big. That's big change.
On the other hand, this is one of the few towns in Monroe County with a history of seeing that seat go back and forth.
So we will now see, with the rest of the night to come here, what these party leaders who are about to speak how they're going to characterize the results that we are seeing. A big win for Adam Bellow, winning re-election as Monroe County executive, the first Democrat ever to do it, and apparently by a margin bigger than a lot of people are going to expect, but we had to see what the final number looks like there. And then for the Democrats in the Monroe County legislature, they appear to be on the verge of getting that majority. Did I ask you recently for the Michael Udelson numbers there? Can we take a look at that, Scott Feibusch?
I believe
he's got to win that seat for Democrats to hold.
The last time I looked, that was very close to being over. Let me just get a couple updated numbers here. All right, we're still waiting on those last 5 districts. In the 18th on the east side, Lister McCoy, the Democrat, still 4 percentage points ahead of Sean Delahanty. And Udelson, remind me what district number we're looking at here.
Yeah, that's a
long night.
That's a lot of districts. It's 29. It's one of the 29.
Yeah, hang on. Working my way down here through all these uncontested races that were on the ballot. I know.
Michael Udelson and Ethan Green, Megan Mack, we're looking for which district number that is, because that's a big one for Democrats. 13.
Number 13. I think we can say that one is over. One district still left to report. Udelson sitting at 56%. Ethan Green under 44%.
Okay.
I think we can call that one.
I'm not entirely convinced that Lister McCoy can't win that seat either, too. So let's we're going to keep our eyes on the final number. But Democrats in the Monroe County Legislature are going to go from a 14-seat, 1-seat minority to not only having the county executive seat, but 15, maybe 16 seats is what it looks like. When the final counting is done, we'll have that dust settling, and we're going to hear from some of the elected leaders tonight and some of the leaders of both parties. Randy Corbin's back with us as we wrap this hour. I don't know if we're going live to the top or if we're just going to go right through it.
I'll tell you what, I know Mike is
live radio
producer, but we will take NPR News at the top of the hour. However, if we do get the county executive candidates, and assuming everything works out technically, we will carry them live. But at this point, we are ready to take NPR News in about 2 minutes or so from now. But again, as we've been talking about, interesting night. Not a great night, apparently, for the Republicans on the county ledge and county exec. And I know you're going to be having some of these candidates on tomorrow on Connections. And I'm really curious to see how they not just really spin it, because I think the folks we're dealing with, a lot of them are going to be very honest about where things stand, but I think they're going to have to do some pretty deep searching on what their strategy is going to be going forward.
All right, a lot to come here. And by the way, when we go to national news from NPR, listeners will be keen to hear some of the national stories. The results in Ohio, voting on abortion and legalized marijuana. Gubernatorial races close between both parties and in very key states that are really kind of indicative of where some of these races are going. So NPR National News coming up, and we are right back here. It's 11:01. Okay. So, one other point I want to make here is that as we look at the races around the region, we've been telling you about the Geneva races. Just got a note from a listener. One of the big changes in Geneva is that Geneva will now have 0 women elected to city government there. So not only did Mayor Steve Valentino win re-election, it looks like, over Jan Regan, the Democratic challenger, but city council had a lot of flips. And after all the contentiousness of the last several years, all of the women, and there were multiple women on the ballot in Geneva, at least 3, I think 4, lost tonight. So a lot of storylines to be following, and this is supposed to be a down year, Scott Freibush. There are no down years in elections. There are no off years.
Interesting one nationally for Democrats. They just held control of the Virginia legislature, which was something they'd been looking very closely, kind of a blow to Glenn Youngkin's hopes for higher office as the Republican governor in Virginia. And we are still waiting on these last 5 districts in Penfield to be able to say something more about the supervisor race there and that 18th District County Ledge race. Should we mention legal ID here? WXXI AM FM and HD Rochester, WEOS FM at HD Geneva, WXXO HD2 Rochester.
It's almost like he wrote these himself.
Of course. And as we go to NPR National News, should mention the city of Rochester will have its youngest ever member of the school board, Isaiah Santiago, 19 years old, elected tonight. NPR National News coming up.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Shay Stevens. Kentucky voters have re-elected Democratic Governor Andy Beshear, according to the Associated Press. Kentucky Public Radio Sylvia Goodman reports that Beshear led by a 5-point margin by the time he announced his victory in Louisville.
A cheer went out across the room at Beshear's election headquarters when the AP called the race, announcing Beshear had won over Republican challenger Daniel Cameron. Supporters chanted Andy as Beshear took the stage to declare victory.
It was a victory that sends a loud, clear message. A message that candidates should run for something and not against someone. And a clear statement that anger politics should end right here and right now.
The incumbent improved significantly on his 2019 win. However, Bashir's success did not carry over to down-ballot races, where Republicans still won big across the board. Issues like abortion access, the state of the economy, and culture war topics dominated the governor's race in the bright red state. For NPR News, I'm Sylvia Goodman in Louisville.
President Biden is applauding Ohio voters for enshrining the right to abortion and other reproductive services in their state's constitution. NPR's Giles Snyder has more.
In a statement, President Biden referred to MAGA Republican efforts to impose what he called extreme abortion bans, saying democracy won. Despite Republican control of state government, Ohio voters overwhelmingly approved Issue 1.
And we're going to interrupt NPR News. Adam Bellow, who has been re-elected, at least unofficially, Evan Dawson, to Monroe County Executive. We're going live now to the Doubletree Hilton Hotel in Jefferson Road.
Because they didn't know what it could do. And if there's one thing that I'm proud about what this team has accomplished over the last 4 years, is that we changed that. And I want to thank every single one of the people in this room, because together we made history. For the first time in Monroe County's history, we have re-elected a Democrat to the office of the county executive. We also have some other important news to make tonight, because for the first time in a long time, we elected a majority of Democrats to the Monroe County Legislature. When I think back to my days working as executive director of the party, we dreamed of a night like this. Back then, every countywide office was held by the Republicans, and we were a far cry away from a majority in the legislature. With years and years of hard work and support, we changed that, and it's a new day in Monroe County. I am really just incredibly proud of the team that we put together. There's countless hours from dedicated people knocking on doors, calling voters, making contributions to get our message out there and talk about the accomplishments that we've made over the last 4 years, how we're impacting this community. And I want to tell you, campaigns are a lot of work, and most of the people in this room know that. You sacrifice a lot of time. It's time away from your family, from your loved ones, and it's in general, you really have no free time, right? But I want to thank all the candidates. I want to thank all their families who made this sacrifice. If you've ever run for office, you raise your hands. I want everybody who's run for office in this room, raise your hands. And I want to make some noise for all of you. I want to hear it for all the candidates who've ever run for office. Because that's a lot of hard work that goes into these jobs, and I'm super proud of every single one of you. And now, we called our campaign team Bellow, because we knew from the beginning that this was not the work of just one person. This wasn't just about me. We're going to need the support of a lot of people, and we aren't just a team. The people you see here behind me and the people in front of me, we're all a big family. And I couldn't possibly thank all of you by name, but I want to talk about a few individuals. First, I want to, of course, talk about my family. So my wife, Megan, let's give it up for Megan. My daughter, Anna, my son, Jack, let's give it up for them. My mom and dad, my in-laws, my brother and sister, all of my family. I spent a lot of time away from my family over the last 4 years, particularly this year, and they really held it together, so I want to thank them. This is really a team effort, and they just did a remarkable job. So thank you for having my back, guys. Thank you. Our campaign team, as you can see, there's so many people to thank, but really, we could not have done this. Jeff, Kristen, Amy, Steve, JW, the whole team. I am just so proud of all of you, the work that you've done. You've gone above and beyond to make this happen. I want to thank you. Mark Seawick, my finance chair, I want to thank you, Mark. I want to thank the men and women of organized labor. Organized labor. Man, did you guys step up? CSCA, FSW, the airport firefighters. All of our public safety unions that stepped up this year, and the building trades. You guys have done a remarkable job. I want to thank you for all of your help and for your support. I also want to thank my friend Congressman Joe Morelli, who couldn't be here today. He's in Washington looking at us from afar. Let's thank Congressman Morelli for all of his help and support as well. Thank you, Joe. And of course, our remarkable leader, the chairman of the Democratic Party, Stephen DeVay. Stephen. Stephen, you're having a great night tonight, my friend. Because not only, I'll break some more news, it's my prerogative. Not only did we take the county executive's race, we won a majority in the county legislature, but ladies and gentlemen, we have another Democrat in the office of the Irondequoit Town Supervisor. Andre. There's Andre. You did it, buddy. You did it. You did it. Nice job. So none of this is done alone. I want to thank all of you. I really want to thank you going back to the start of my career here in public service. I want to thank you all for believing in me. I want to thank you for believing in this campaign. Tonight we're going to celebrate, but tomorrow we got to get back to work. We've been working hard. Over the last 4 years, we've been making record investments in our public safety infrastructure. We've been at the front lines. Thank you. We've been at the front lines of tackling our public health challenges. We've been putting people back to work, training the next generation of workforce. We've been investing in our infrastructure, and we're doing all of that while protecting our taxpayers. We proved you can make the right investments and protect taxpayers at the same time. Over the next 4 years, we're going to see these projects come to fruition, and we're going to make historic investments in this community, and we're going to see how we can impact all of these challenges that we face, whether it's poverty, homelessness, providing resources to our veterans, supporting the older, our aging population here, our young people. We are making the right investments to meet the needs of the challenges that we have at this time. And I want to say this again. One of the things I'm most proud about this government is that people are no longer asking like they did 4 years ago what county government does anymore. Now they're asking, what are you going to do to help? And I am so proud that we've changed the conversation. We've done so much in such a short time, and the one thing I want to leave you with is how we started this campaign. We're just getting started. So thank you all so much. Thank you again. I look forward to working with you for another 4 years. Thanks, everybody.
And a big night, Evan Dawson and Scott Feibush for Adam Bellow, first Democrat really to be reelected. I know the county executive system in Monroe County around for about 50 years or so, but still an accomplishment for him, not just winning last time, but winning this time, and apparently with a majority, even if a slim one, on the Monroe County legislature.
That's what relief sounds like. That's what, and frankly, a jubilant Adam Bellow winning by the numbers they did. He said he was going to break the news. He says, it's my prerogative to break the news. We won the legislature. We'll see all the votes counted, but it certainly looks like that. Could be even a 16-13 Democratic majority, at least 15-14. And we're waiting to see now when we may go to Mark Cassini. Any second now, we're told. In fact, they're shaking hands, and he looks like he's heading up. Let's listen to Mark Cassini, the Republican.
Always a bridesmaid, never a bride.
Right now.
But I did get off the phone with County Executive Adam Bellow. I congratulated him. I wished him well. and much success in his next 4 years. We do not want to root against those people that represent us. Even in a tough-fought election, we want them to succeed. This community, the people in it, our neighbors, are too important to root against our elected officials. So I ask you to get behind our county executive, help him lead this community, help him fix the very difficult problems he's going to be facing in the next couple of years. So with that, I just want to have a couple of thank yous. First, to our chair, Pat Riley. I want to thank him for all of his support and what he's done as the GOP chair, bringing this party together. Round of applause for Pat. Don Mazzullo, our Conservative Party chair. Don, thank you very much for all that you've done for this community. We appreciate that. Arnie Rothschild, thank you. Where's Arnie? Thank you for all your support and your help on this campaign. If I start listing all the volunteers, I'm going to miss somebody, and I'm going to get somebody angry. So all the volunteers, all of you that have helped, contributed, donated, made phone calls, thank you so very much. I'm so very grateful. And I want to leave this last thought with you about how fortunate and blessed I am. My family was there for me. My sister Vicky, my sister Terry, my brother Carl. He's militant. He's a Bernie guy, Bernie Sanders, but I love him. My children, Amanda and Catherine. Nick is home right now in Manhattan. He's an investment banker down in New York. He and his lovely wife and my daughter-in-law, Alicia, and my newest grandchild. I have grandchildren here, Ash and Jason, and Jason voted for the first time. He told me he voted for me. I'm not sure. I'll have to talk to him about that, but somebody didn't vote for me. But especially, of course, my wife. Come on up here. Just 1 second, please. Marianne. She's right. I'm out of my mind. But no, it's funny. My board. I work at American Rock Salt, and by the way, all the folks at American Rock Salt, I wish my best to you. Thank you so much for all your support and letting me do this. It's been a tough run. Just so you know, I was managing, my duties at American Rock Salt while I was campaigning, and be getting up at 5:30 in the morning and finishing when I pass out at night. So it's not an easy venture. But especially my wife, Marianne. She's been so patient all these years, supporting me. In all the things I do, and I just want to say I love you and thank you for supporting me. And yeah, I don't think we're going to do anything for a while. I think we'll focus on us. So love you. Thank you. God bless everybody. Thank you so much.
That's Mark Cassini in his concession speech says he called Adam Bellow to congratulate him. And I have to say, his comment about Adam Bellow saying that the campaign is over, that we should root for him to succeed, we want the winners to succeed, and that's important for this county, that is pure class from Mark Cassini tonight. Some brief remarks from him on a night that he didn't want. That's not what Mark Cassini wanted. That's not what Republicans wanted. That was pure class. But if you actually look at the results, very hard night for Republicans, and probably a lot of soul-searching right now, Randy Corbin.
I think so, and they just got a new chair, and, Pat Riley, affable guy. I know he's been on with you, Evan. I'm sure we'll be talking to him in the days to come. But, yeah, I mean, soul-searching and planning, and they're going to have to look at fundraising and their structure and everything else, because the last couple of, local elections have not gone their way, obviously.
Let's look at one bright spot for them tonight. We have the last numbers are in now that we were waiting for from Penfield. A surprisingly close, I think, for many people, race for Penfield supervisor. And it looks like pending absentee ballots, pending any kind of contest there, it looks like the Republican Jeff Leanhoutz is ahead of Democrat Tiffany Rice by about 150 votes, about 1.5 percentage points. So a Republican hold, but closer than expected in Penfield. And so let's bring up the two other numbers we were waiting for. Out there, Penfield Town Council, even closer. There is literally, you ready for this, Evan? There is a 1-vote margin between the number 2 and number 3 candidates in a race for 2 seats. So you can guarantee that, well, Democrat Linda Teglash looks like she's been elected. The other Democrat, Kevin Barry, 1 vote ahead of Republican Alan Hetzke. 1 vote matters. Every vote matters sometimes. And with that, let's go to the county ledge race up there that we were waiting for, even though control of the ledge, we know now, goes back to the Democrats. It looks like by an even larger margin than we anticipated, because I would not have predicted at the beginning of the night, neither would you, Evan, that the Democrat Lister McCoy would end up winning that 18th district race on the east side in Perrington and Penfield. And she did by close to 4 percentage points.
Good gracious.
52 to 48.
It's going to be, it looks like, unless something is strange in the counting, it is a 16 to 13 Democratic majority. You know, it could be an indicator early on that Republicans knew this was coming. Randy Gorman, when Steve Brew, a majority leader for the Republicans in the legislature, said, you know, it's important that, you know, no one acts very partisan and we all work together. It's easy to say that when you can be in the minority.
Yeah.
Now I'm laughing, but Steve is a guy who, hey, his party and the Democrats came together for a 29-0 vote on the budget last year. So there has been, and Howard Mafucci brought this up on Connections, there has been more bipartisanship than we've seen in recent years, and perhaps we'll see that.
One more that we can also put a bow on at this point, and that's for Paul Dondorfer, also on the east side there, by about 2 percentage points over Democrat Mel Callan.
Very close.
In the 9th district race. So that, by my count, makes it 16-13, and it sets up, I think, some interesting questions for next year when we're going to have a campaign for Congress in a seat that Mark Cassini once tried to campaign for.
I wonder who's going to run from the Republicans
Yeah,
for Congress in the 25th district.
That is an open question right now, and this is a party that is going to have to evaluate, how did you lose the county executive seat, the legislature, congressional seats? You haven't been all that close in. There's probably a lot of conversations that are going to have to happen, because if you look at today and all you knew was that the city of Rochester turned out the way it did, which is only about 17%, while some suburbs turned out in the mid-30s, and Democrats had worked for weeks to try to get city turnout up, and it didn't really work. If that's all you knew, you would not have predicted a Democratic landslide today. And that's what they got. That is a massive overperformance. Remarkable.
One final set of numbers. Family court judge. Almost all the districts are in at this point. It's looking very much like it's definitely Maria Cuvilos-Reed, the Democrat, and very likely Christine Demo Vasquez behind her, which means that Andrea Roman is off family court after 20 years there.
Yeah. And by the way, I'm reading, and I got to look, even the town of Pittsford elected Democrats to town council. Can we take a quick look there, Scott Feibush?
Let us take a quick look.
Before we get off the air here on this, I'm going to call it a marathon election night. It's still pretty early as election nights go, Randy Gorman.
And again, another one of those uncontested supervisor races with Bill Smith, the longtime incumbent there. So here's where we are now with 6 districts that we're still waiting for from there. Right now, the 2 Democrats are still ahead and have stayed ahead even as the same-day vote has come in. Interestingly enough, right now we are looking at 49 votes between the number 2 Democrat and the number 3 Republican there. So can't put that one to bed quite yet tonight, but looking very, very close at least. And again,
Evan,
you wouldn't have called that at the beginning of the night.
No.
Now, I know you were waiting for this, Evan, the 2 ballot propositions.
Yes, sir.
Easily approved, even though not all the votes are in, but certainly much more than a half. They are both about a 2-to-1 margin. Voters in New York State, even if they didn't know what the heck they were reading, they still voted for them. One changes the way small city school districts can borrow money. The other allows municipalities to access more funds for sewer lines and other infrastructure. So in any case, if you were following those, it looks like they both passed.
As we get ready to wrap here, one of the questions that most of the Democrats dodged when they came on Connections, I asked, look, you're trying to flip this legislature. It's been a hard couple of years because Democrats thought they had a 15-14 majority, and then one of their members, Sabrina Lamar, caucused with Republicans and became president of the legislature. President of the legislature is one of the few jobs on the ledge that actually pays well. It pays over $50,000 a year, and you get to set a lot of legislative priorities. So I asked Democrats, if you can do this, who do you want to see as the next president? And they all said, boy, I haven't even thought about it, which, to be charitable. I think that's something that they just didn't want to talk about yet. But now they're going to be able to talk about it. Who will be the next president of the legislature? I have no idea. With a 15-14 or 16-13 majority, they'll have some decisions to make. You already have some members of the legislature putting out releases, talking about the priorities they want to see. So, a very interesting night and a big night for local Democrats. And, of course, WXXInews.org will have more. WXXI Morning Edition coverage will bring you all the wrap-up and anything that we miss or anything that changes overnight, right?
That's right. And still to be decided, as we mentioned, some of these are too close to call in some cases. Everything is unofficial, as they say, election night.
That's right.
But some of them are very close, and there are going to be challenges here. And, of course, on Connections, you'll have some of the winners and maybe even some of the losers. I don't know, but we'll see. You've got a bunch of people you're looking at having on tomorrow.
Well, from the whole team at Connections, of course, that's Randy Gorban, Scott Feibush. Thank you, sir. Thanks for the great work here. And the people who never get the credit are the ones behind the glass. That's Mike Black and Megan Mack and the jack of all trades who do everything to make these programs go. From the whole team in the field, bringing you live coverage from the different headquarters, and our partners at WEOS covering the Finger Lakes. What a night. Thanks for joining us for live election coverage. WXXInews.org for more. Good night.
You're listening to WXXI FM and HD Rochester, WXXI FM HD2, WXXO FM HD2 Rochester, and online at WXXInews.org. We're now going to join our regularly scheduled program in progress, the Capitol Press Room.
And the report that came out in August. And as you can see, that's pretty much comprehensive. We really tried to delve into all the latest reports and law journals that address biometrics and the use that it has on students, whether or not it's equitable. And then also, we did a survey, we meaning state ed. We surveyed our school districts to see how often they were using biometrics and whether they had any specific concerns, as well as ITS did a much broader survey, and I think they got well over 1,000 responses to figure out what concerns people had and how much it was being used in the field.
So then what was the root of the ban on the facial recognition technology? What in the report led you guys to decide that this was not something you wanted school districts to utilize?
I think you have to weigh the benefit of the technology versus its problems. And it's still not necessarily a very equitable technology. It doesn't seem to register people of color, transgender people, older people, younger people, which for the most part we're talking about younger people whose face may change somewhat substantially year to year. It just doesn't treat them the same. It has a lot of false positives versus the few benefits of using it for a security system for schools. It didn't seem to weigh out in favor of the benefits.
Well, you mentioned some of the potential downsides, especially this idea of false positives with marginalized communities, whether it's people of color or, say, the transgender students. But in reading the report, it seems like the analysis is problematic twofold. One, that it relies on some outdated reports, some that are, say, 5-6 years old in an area where technology is constantly evolving. And two, there are also counterexamples, though, in the report where they talk about how it has been successfully used and how some of the ways that we've thought about this as being problematic are no longer relevant. So is it possible that this report is kind of just recycling old talking points, say, from the Civil Liberties Union and doesn't necessarily represent the best evaluation of the technology?
I don't think so, David. I think the report really tried to reflect on a lot of different studies and weigh them, including the most recent White House report, which included AI and some biometric studies. The report also acknowledges that this technology is certainly improving, and one day it may need to be readdressed and looked at again and figured out whether we can actually use it as a technology for schools. I think several reports that are referenced in that report from August clearly state that it is definitely improving, but it's not quite there yet. There's a NIST standard that they've set for AI, and I think that that's helping to improve it, but I don't think it's quite there yet. It just doesn't weigh. When you weigh the balance, it hasn't won out over the undesirable parts of the technology.
Well, given the evolution of the technology, is this something where you imagine the state education department will do a future review every year, or is this something where you feel like you've said your say, and unless the legislature compels you to do another review, this is it for now?
I think this is it for a little while. Right now, as you can imagine, the focus is now starting to turn to AI. So I think this is the be-all and end-all for FRT for a little while, but we are certainly open to look at it again if some report comes out or some information that it is a much more viable technology and that we should take another look at it.
And what about the cost of this? Is this something that schools, for the most part, if they wanted to, could actually afford to purchase, or is some of this stuff so cost prohibitive the conversation we're having is basically a moot point since they maybe couldn't even afford it?
I think that's a really good question, David. My understanding is that most schools probably could not afford this technology on their own accord. Most schools that were using it were buying it through the Smart Schools Bond Act, so they were getting funding for the technology through that method.
Well, unfortunately, we're going to have to leave it there. We've been speaking with Louise DeCandia. She is the Chief Privacy Officer for the State Education Department. Louise, thanks for visiting us in the studio.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
And for more Capitol Press Room content, visit capitolpressroom.org or wherever you download your favorite podcasts. And if you listen to us from an Apple device, make sure to leave us a rating and a review so it helps other people find the show.
Support for Capitol Press Room provided by the William G. Pomeroy Foundation. Communities across the Empire State have stories to tell. A roadside marker funded by the William G. Pomeroy Foundation can help your town or city educate the public, encourage pride of place, and promote local tourism. More about the Pomeroy Foundation's New York State Historic Marker Grant Program for 501c3 organizations, nonprofit academic institutions, and local, state, and federal government entities at wgpfoundation.org.
5 years ago, a deadly wildfire nearly wiped the town of Paradise, California off the map. Most of the town still hasn't been rebuilt.
It's a ton of work, but considering it's only been 5 years and we had a pandemic in the middle of that, what we've accomplished is just a miracle.
Why disaster recovery takes so long on the next All Things Considered from NPR News.
Tomorrow afternoon at 4 on WXXI.
In recognition of the shifting demographics in the Empire State, aka our ballooning number of seniors, the Hochul administration is working on crafting a state master plan for aging designed to ensure coordinated, comprehensive state policies that take into consideration the needs of older New Yorkers. For an update on this effort, we're joined on the Capitol Press Room by Adam Herbst, Deputy Commissioner for Aging and Long-Term Care at the State Department of Health, and is serving as chair of the Governor's Master Plan for Aging Council. Welcome back to the show, Adam.
Hi, David. It's a pleasure to rejoin you here today and speak with the Capitol Press Room.
So advocates for seniors have come on this show and said that the creation of a master plan on aging is a bold new idea for New York. But I'm a cynical journalist with somewhat low expectations about the groundbreaking potential of a planning process controlled by state agencies. So can you explain to me why this is a big deal for my parents and people of their ilk?
Sure thing. A little cynicism is always a good thing. But it's not just for your parents, it's for all the state, all of New York. The Master Plan for Aging is an initiative that reflects our ambition in New York, our effectiveness and uniqueness of our state. It was mandated by Governor Hochul's Executive Order 23 in November of 2022 to improve the lives of today's older New Yorkers and people with disabilities and build a better system of care for the future of people aging in the state of New York and ensuring more inclusive communities for the future. The MPA is about making services and supports work for the ways that people actually live and make sure that they're addressing real and current needs. And we're focusing on addressing ideas like isolation and ageism and housing and transportation, healthcare services and supports with a recognition that aging is a natural process with many things to celebrate.
Is it fair to say you're still soliciting input for the plan? And if so, what's the best way for New Yorkers to put in their 2 cents?
Absolutely. We're looking for every New Yorker to get involved and participate. We have online in 17 different languages a survey, both a paper version and an online available on our website. That's at ny.gov/MPA to fill in and return. The survey looks at economic security and needs, looks at issues of social isolation, housing, medical needs, and accessibility of services. And as we look to get the input from all New Yorkers, we're hoping that this will help us plan things as diverse as transportation infrastructure and programs supporting home service agencies. We're keeping this survey open through the end of the year, and we especially want to hear from all New Yorkers, particularly older adults and people with disabilities and people who are caregivers, but we want everybody to feel like they can participate in helping our master plan for aging be successful. The public input is critical to ensuring that this process addresses the most pressing needs of our older and disabled New Yorker population, so we can build a responsive system of supports that will help overcome, obstacles as we age, and our state sees demographics changing for the future.
And that website, again, for listeners interested in putting in their 2 cents, is ny.gov/MPA. In addition to that survey, you can also sign up to get updates from the council. So at the September meeting of the council, you noted that a preliminary report had been completed and sent to the governor. What are some of the highlights of those recommendations?
Well, this blueprint of strategies has been focusing on improving many things in our caregiving, recruitment, retention, or training for different kinds of workers, both formally and informal caregivers, and we want to support them. And that's one critical aspect of the master plan. We're also recognizing the impact on our communities and our economy from the work of unpaid caregivers. And the governor's mission has to really be looking at that. And that's something that we have been focusing on quite extensively as part of our interim report. The governor's mission statement here is to help people lead fulfilling lives in good health with freedom and dignity and independence to age in place for as long as possible. So in addition to caregiving, both formal and informal, and looking at the workforce, we're looking at combating elder abuse and ageism. We're looking at housing and community planning, social engagement of older adults, and promoting health and access to services in rural communities. We're focusing extensively on technology access and development, affordability of basic necessities, and access to services and engagement with historically marginalized communities across the state. And finally, we're looking at the modernization and financial sustainability of our healthcare system for both residential facilities and community-based aging network service providers. And this preliminary report has, done quite a bit to lay out some of our initial accomplishments and our agenda for the coming year. And ultimately, the goal of the MPA is to provide guidance for building healthy, livable communities that offer opportunities for people as they age, again, with the mission of the governor in a good health, freedom, dignity, and independence to age in place for as long as possible.
Well, before we move on, let me reintroduce you for listeners just joining us. Our guest is Adam Herbst, Deputy Commissioner for Aging and Long-Term Care at the State Department of Health, and is serving as chair of the governor's Master Plan for Aging Council, which is responsible for crafting a master plan for aging designed to ensure coordinated, comprehensive state policies that take into consideration the needs of older New Yorkers. So those were some beautiful sentiments and aspirational goals, but in terms of maybe hard, concrete policies that might represent a break from what is business as usual. Are there any recommendations in the preliminary report, the 71-page report, that you think are going to be part of the governor's agenda in 2024, or maybe her budget, for example? Anything we should keep an eye out for, especially if it represents either a change from the status quo or a new commitment in a certain area?
Absolutely. One thing I want to make clear is that we're looking at the MPA over a 10-year period, not just in the next fiscal year. Many of the ideas that we've been working with the work groups and subcommittees have been percolating with the governor's team, with various state agencies, to ensure that we can bring back the feedback we're receiving from both the work groups and from the community engagement. And as we continue to do town halls and listening sessions across the state, engaging with the public, we're learning a lot about what is needed for this master plan to be successful. We have brought much of that to the governor's team, and some of it will certainly be relevant for this year's fiscal cycle. But again, we're looking at this over a 10-year horizon, and many of the ideas that we're going to be putting into the future budgets are going to be directly related to the ideas that are coming from the Master Plan for Aging's work group and subcommittees.
But I have to imagine the process of crafting the plan isn't always going to require you and your council members to reinvent the wheel, so to speak. A lot of the ideas are things that stakeholders are already thinking about, have already told you about in these meetings, whether it's the council meetings or the stakeholder advisory committee. So, again, circling back to that question, what do you think can be done in the short term to get the ball rolling? And is it just about funding, or are there actual policy things that could be done in 2024?
Many policy ideas, many policy ideas, again, going to the workforce, going to transportation and housing. These are things that we've been proud of New York. And I want to just say before I go forward, New York has been building this master plan on the backbone of the work that's been done for many years. Like you said, David, New York was recognized in 2017 by AARP as the first age-friendly state in the nation, which followed a decade embedding smart growth and livability principles in the operation of state government for older New Yorkers. We have been leaders in this space for many years, and what we're doing now is we're expanding, we're scaling much of that work. And the preliminary report, which laid out a lot of the accomplishments and our agenda for this coming year, like you're saying, but for many future years, focuses on these ideas that have been in the state, and the participants in the work groups and subcommittees and people across the state who are contributing their ideas in our town halls and in the survey are building on these ideas that we've had in the state for many years.
One of the things that is the recurring theme that I noticed from the council meetings when you open it up for public comment is the idea of additional services, additional oversight, expansion of programs, all things that cost money. So is that going to be part of this conversation, recommending increased investments in services for seniors? Because that would represent a real break from the status quo, especially when we consider something like the Office for Aging constantly getting flat funding, regardless of the governor.
Our governor has made a commitment to this growing population. She's made this a pillar of her initiatives in really scaling the Master Plan for Aging. She has put so many ideas under one roof here to ensure that we're successful. If in fact we, together with the governor's support and the input that we're receiving from the public, decide that certain things require investment, I'm sure the governor and the team will look to see how best we can accomplish that.
You're a smart guy. You are living and breathing these things. I mean, you have to know that these things are going to cost additional money, whether it's expanded access to home care, whether it's paying for housing accessibility upgrades so people can spend more time in their homes, a program that's dramatically underfunded currently. So isn't there obviously going to be a need for more funding? Can we embrace that statement? And if we can't, doesn't that sort of speak to the initial point that I made about being skeptical of the Master Plan for Aging and its import?
Well, skepticism is always a good thing. Like I said, David, at the beginning, we want to ensure that the MPA is successful. If in fact we decide certain funding requirement is needed and the governor decides that this is a pillar of where she wants to put her focus, these are the things that we're discussing. It's also important that it's not strictly on the state. We need to build public-private partnerships. We need to work with local communities. We need to work with the public sector. And philanthropy. There are so many avenues that we don't want to leave undistinguished in terms of the work we're doing here. We're not working in silos here. The MPA is looking and focusing on our core mission statement, which requires us to work together with state and local communities and the private sector to ensure this is a successful enterprise.
Yeah, that idea of silos was something that came up in conversation during, I think, the September meeting, just about the issue more broadly of maybe the left hand not knowing what the right hand is doing. Have you come across in the initial meetings areas where there can be more efficiencies, or whether new partnerships can be found among state agencies as the result of these discussions that have been going on so far?
I think so. I think that's one of the remarkable things what the governor did here with the executive order, putting on this commission a group of commissioners and delegates from all the different state agencies that have various work that overlaps. It's important for us to now speak together, and that's one of the important aspects of what we're doing now. All these state agencies and local communities are collaborating to ensure that we're on the same page, we're not working in silos, and we're recognizing the work that's been done to ensure that we build a better, more sustainable system for aging New Yorkers going forward.
Well, we've been speaking with Adam Herbst. He is the Deputy Commissioner for Aging and Long-Term Care at the State Department of Health and serves as the chair of the Governor's Master Plan for Aging Council, which is soliciting feedback through the end of the year. And you can find a survey they have at ny.gov/MPA. Adam, thank you so much for making the time, and good luck crafting the plan.
Thanks, David. And keep that skepticism. It's going to keep us on our toes.
And for more Capitol Press Room content, visit capitolpressroom.org or wherever you download your favorite podcasts. And if you listen to us from an Apple device, make sure to leave us a rating and a review so it helps other people find the show.
Business, agency, or service interested in delivering your message to more than 24 radio stations statewide carrying Capitol Press Room? If so, visit capitolpressroom.org to contact our underwriting team.
Investigators say a Texas prison inmate attacked a guard. Witnesses say in response, the guards beat him so badly he's now in a coma.
What about the culture that promotes this type of incident, this type of action towards inmates?
What about the culture? Is it too few staff for too many inmates? On the next morning edition from NPR News.
Tomorrow morning at 5 on WXXI.
This is WCNY's The Capitol Press Room, and we're turning our attention to the state's process of determining the eligibility of New Yorkers on Medicaid to receive home care services, a process that has been undergoing a massive transition and is poised to impact more vulnerable New Yorkers in 2024. To discuss the planned changes, as well as reflect on the experience to date with the New York Independent Assessor Program, we're joined once again by Rebecca Antar-Novick, Director of the Health Law Unit at the Legal Aid Society. Welcome back to the show, Rebecca.
Thanks for having me.
So, for some background, stemming from a 2020 state law, the state decided, in an attempt to realize efficiencies and save money, according to, I think, then Governor Cuomo, to require Medicaid patients obtain an independent assessment of their needs before obtaining home care services. And the state contracted out the assessment program to a private company, Maximus. What was the old way of doing assessments, and how does that compare to the current process we have?
Most people in New York who are on Medicaid and receiving home care are in a Medicaid managed care plan. There are different types of plans that provide home care. And so most people have always had all their assessments done by that managed care plan. There are certain people who also receive home care directly through their county, and those individuals were evaluated by their county. When the program rolled out last year, to this point is still only doing initial assessments, so it's assessments for people who don't yet have home care. And so the plans and the counties to this point have continued to do the reassessments for people who need to keep care, and that's what's going to change soon.
So for people then who have been trying to get home care for the first time, they've had to go through this new assessment process?
Yes, that's correct.
And how, if at all, has that experience differed, or the outcomes of the assessments, generally speaking, differed from the previous review process?
Well, we've found that the process has been overall pretty confusing for consumers. There were some significant delays in the beginning, but I acknowledge that the timing of assessments has certainly gotten better over the last year and a half since this was rolled out. But what has continued to be a real challenge for consumers is how many steps they really need to go through and how many different entities that they're dealing with in order to get care. We found that overall there really seems to be a delay from when people are initially requesting care to when they receive it. A number of advocates have found that people are being assessed as needing less care than we believe they actually need, or being assessed that they don't need care at all. When we meet with the individual and look to potentially represent them on a case, it seems very, very clear that they meet the legal standard for receiving home care under Medicaid. One example of just the difficulty of the process is that for people in mainstream Medicaid managed care, these are individuals who are getting all their health care from the Medicaid program and through their managed care plan. When they are going through this independent assessor process, they really need to ask for the care twice. They need to ask for the assessment, and then after the assessment happens, they then have to contact their plan to get services. And it's not really clear to individuals that they need to do this. And there are a lot of other ways in which there are multi-step processes through going through these assessments and different entities that have to be contacted and worked with by consumers. And we find that causes delays. We really can only speak in anecdotes. And, one challenge that advocates and, I think a lot of the other entities who interact with this program are having is that we haven't seen a lot of data that would really help us to understand how this is really working for people. We've seen some data, including on just the number of people assessed and things like that. But things like how long is it truly taking for somebody from when they ask for care to when they're receiving care, and what are the scores that people are getting that translate to how much care they're authorized for, and how does that compare to the old system? And this is data that we think would be very, very helpful to really understand the impact that this is having on consumers.
Well, despite the ambiguity about the rollout so far and its impact on Medicaid patients, you mentioned that the state is planning to expand the number of New Yorkers who are subject to these independent assessments moving forward. Can you explain the schedule that is planned by state healthcare officials and kind of the scope of this expansion? Because I think, as you said, this is going to impact the people who already receive services and they're checking on their status to continue receiving them?
That's right. So starting in January of 2024, there's a gradual rollout where people in different counties are going to start having to use the new system for reassessments month by month. Some people won't be impacted until later in 2024, but it depends on where in the state you live. And yes, as you said, first of all, when you're receiving Medicaid home care, you have to be reassessed once a year. And so for people who need just their annual reassessment, it's now going to go through the independent assessor program, as well as people who need an assessment because they actually have a change of circumstances. These are called, the distinction is between routine reassessments and non-routine reassessments. And non-routine reassessments are for people who might have had to go into the hospital or into a rehabilitation facility because of a medical issue that came up, or just somebody who unfortunately is experiencing a decline in their condition and they need additional help. And so the rollout is going to impact both of these kinds of reassessments.
So back at the end of October, the Legal Aid Society, along with some other partners representing consumers in the system, made some recommendations to the health department and the Medicaid director more specifically about the best way forward. First off, as we speak on November 2nd, have you gotten any response from the Hochul administration?
We have not yet received a response. Yes, the letter was sent from the Medicaid Matters New York Coalition and a number of the organizations that make up that coalition. And we do routinely meet with the Department of Health on a number of consumer issues. So we've had discussions about the program, but have not received a response to the letter.
So aside from postponing the expansion entirely, which is your number one recommendation, and one that I have to imagine is not something they're going to take you up on, what do you think are the meaningful changes that the state can implement in advance of the expansion rollout plan for 2024?
We are recommending a postponement, and then also recommending that routine reassessments, the ones that are just happening every year for somebody who may, very likely be in the same position that they were last year health-wise and in terms of their social circumstances, we're recommending that the states start with those routine reassessments, and only after that is in place, then moving on to changing the process for non-routine reassessments, because those non-routine reassessments are just so often more urgent. And we've also made recommendations about just putting out more information about really what is a very confusing process that, we're just recommending that detailed letters explaining all of these new procedures and the steps that people have to take be sent out to impacted consumers. We're also recommending improved training for the call center staff, who are the ones who are receiving the inquiries from individuals and family members when they're requesting care. Over the year and a half that this program has been in effect, we've identified a number of instances of misinformation that people have received in the call center, which is understandable. It really is a very complicated system. And because people are calling it in different places in the process, it is a lot. It is complicated for a call center. And, so we're recommending improved training now that those answering the phone at the call center are going to be facing even additional circumstances in which people are calling. As I've discussed, we're asking for data. We are really trying to understand how people who are in all different circumstances in terms of the type of plan they're in and in terms of whether they received a denial or an approval and are engaging in the process and potentially appealing through the process in different ways. We really are trying to understand what the overall situation is for consumers and how they're getting care. And finally, asking for additional guidance. I had mentioned guidance for consumers, but also for the large number of additional entities, plans, the counties that are handling some home care, medical providers. We're just, really asking for detailed information to go out to all of these entities before the rollout begins.
Well, finally, do you think that the independent assessor program is something that, with the right tweaks and emphasis, can be a successful and meaningful program, both in terms of ensuring that people are getting the care they deserve while also saving the state some sort of money? Or do you think that this program is broken at its core and should just be scrapped, either reverting back to the old way of doing things or making structural changes?
I think that it is an extremely complicated program, and in order to succeed, it really needs to be slowed down in terms of its rollout. And again, it's sort of hard, it's a little bit, I think, hard to answer, whether it should go away entirely or just be revised a lot without, seeing the data as to what the impact is. I think that unfortunately the idea that this program is going to succeed at saving money for the state is based on a premise that people are receiving care to which they shouldn't be entitled under the law. And I'm one advocate, seeing a limited number of consumers, but that's just absolutely not what I'm seeing. I see many people who are getting a lot less care than the law would really entitle them to, and I see people fighting for the care that you need. I mean, we've had clients over months and months just running into many challenges, getting through this system when they clearly are entitled to care. And so, it's a little bit hard to say whether this program really ever could save money unless it's taking away care from people who are really entitled to it. I think however, this program is designed, it really needs to be focused around getting people through the system and getting people the information that they need to understand how to as quickly as possible get the care they need. And when there is a disagreement between the assessor and the individual about how much care, helping them get through appeals processes quicker so that they can, in fact, get what they need.
Well, unfortunately, we're going to have to leave it there. We've been speaking with Rebecca Antar-Novick, Director of the Health Law Unit at the Legal Aid Society. Rebecca, thank you so much for making the time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
And for more Capitol Press Room content, visit capitolpressroom.org or wherever you download your favorite podcasts. And if you listen to us from an Apple device, make sure to leave us a rating and a review so it helps other people find the show.
Support for the Capitol Press Room provided by the New York State AFL-CIO, a federation of 3,000 unions fighting for working people by keeping New York State union strong. Visit unionstrongny.org for more information. Join us again for Capitol Press Room, a production of WCNY Connected, Syracuse.
This is WXXI AM, FM at HD Rochester and WXXO HD2 Rochester.
Sure, we could have used ChatGPT to write this promo, but then it wouldn't have been honest or have the human touch you know us for. On Morning Edition from NPR News, you can hear stories told and written by people, not by AI. Listen every weekday.
I'm Evan Dawson. Wednesday on the Next Connections, we welcome some of the winners in the 2023 elections. We'll talk to candidates for everything from Monroe County Executive to local mayoral races, the county legislature. We'll break down the results, talk about the implications, and a lot more. That's coming up Wednesday on Connections.
Tomorrow at noon on WXXI.
Hello and welcome to Newsday on the BBC World Service with Victoria Wahunda and Rob Young.
Coming up, Israel says it's tightening the noose around Hamas in Gaza City as discussions have begun about who will rebuild and run the Palestinian territory once the fighting is over. We'll hear from a member of Israel's war cabinet and a former diplomat with his own plan.
Also ahead this half hour, voters in Ohio in the United States have approved an amendment to the state's constitution guaranteeing the right to an abortion there. It makes Ohio the 7th state to back the right to a termination.
We will look at one of the winners of Prince William's Earthshot Prize.
And it is the 400th anniversary of the publication of the first folio, the collection of Shakespeare's plays that ensured we're still able to perform his works today. We'll be heading to the theatre after a bulletin of the latest world news.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Shay Stevens. Kentucky voters have chosen incumbent Democrat Andy Beshear to continue serving as their governor. Beshear told supporters in Louisville that his re-election victory is an indictment against extreme politics.
This wasn't my win. This was our victory. It was a victory that sends a loud, clear message. A message that candidates should run for something and not against someone.
Beshear beat Trump-endorsed Republican challenger Daniel Cameron. The nation is again facing the threat of a government shutdown in less than 2 weeks if Congress fails to pass a new budget. House Republicans still do not have a plan, and the top Senate Republican is making no secret of what it will take, as NPR's Eric McDaniel reports.
Any funding bill will require 60 votes to pass the Senate. Democrats control the chamber, but only just barely. The proposal will have to attract at least 9 Republican votes. Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell laid out specifically what that means.
Border security needs to be a part of this package if it's going to move out of the Senate.
Some House Republicans tell NPR that they also hope to see policy changes at the U.S.-Mexico border. Despite being short on time, House Republican lawmakers are still debating approaches for how to keep the government open and still appear far from coalescing around a proposal of their own. Eric McDaniel, NPR News, the Capitol Building.
House lawmakers have voted 234 to 188 to censure Palestinian-American Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib over her comments about Israel. The Michigan Democrat recently tweeted that much of America does not stand with Israel in its war with Hamas. She also shared a video that critics called anti-Semitic. 22 Democrats joined Republicans in voting for censure, which is a step below expulsion. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen is promising better customer service and beefed-up tax enforcement from the IRS in the coming year. As NPR's Scott Horsley reports, Yellen has told IRS employees that the changes will depend upon continued funding.
Yellen says the IRS is hiring more telephone operators to keep wait times down and more specialized auditors to make sure wealthy people and corporations pay the taxes they owe. Last year, lawmakers set aside tens of billions of dollars to modernize the IRS. Yellen chastised congressional Republicans for trying to chip away at that.
Playing politics with IRS funding is unacceptable. Cutting it would be damaging and irresponsible.
Last week, the GOP-controlled House voted to cut more than $14 billion in IRS funding to offset the cost of aid to Israel. Nonpartisan bean counters warn that scrimping on tax collection would only widen the federal deficit. Scott Horsley, NPR News, Washington.
Wall Street stocks closed slightly higher. The Dow added 56 points. The Nasdaq rose 121. This is NPR. A Facebook whistleblower has told a Senate panel that the social media giant knew that it was harming teens but did nothing about it. NPR's Derek Kerr has the story.
Arturo Bejar's job at Facebook was to make the social media site safer. He said he crunched data and found teens were being bullied and getting unwanted sexual advances at an alarming rate. In 2021, he wrote Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg detailing what he found. He says he never heard back and the problem remains. Now Bejar has put the matter before a Senate subcommittee. The bipartisan group of lawmakers say they want to regulate social media companies so this doesn't keep happening. Senator Richard Blumenthal led the hearing.
We can no longer rely on social media's mantra, trust us.
A Facebook spokesperson says the company works every day to keep kids safe online. During the hearing, Blumenthal urged Congress to get legislation passed this year. Derek Kerr, NPR News.
A man wrongfully imprisoned for the infamous 1989 rape and beating of a Central Park jogger is now a member of the New York City Council. Youssef Salam will represent Central Harlem after running unopposed. Salam was 15 years old when he and 4 other black and Latino men were convicted of attacking a white jogger. The convictions were overturned after DNA evidence backed up the assailant's confession. U.S. futures are flat in after-hours trading on Wall Street. On Asia-Pacific markets, shares are mostly higher. I'm Shay Stevens. This is NPR News.
Arturo Bejar's job.
From NPR stations. Other contributors include the Charles Stewart Mott Foundation. For more than 95 years, supporting efforts to promote a just, equitable, and sustainable society. More at mott.org. And the listeners who support this NPR station.
Thank you for that bulletin of news. Hello, you're with Newsday from the BBC World Service with Victoria Wahunda and Rob Young. Coming up this half hour, we've got stories for you from Israel, from Gaza and from the United States. We're also going to bring you a top business headline and all the sports news you need to know as well. As always, we welcome your messages on the stories we're covering on the programme. The number you need for your text and your WhatsApp messages is +44 77 86 20 50 85.
We are starting the program with our continuing coverage of the fighting between Israel and Hamas. The Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, has said that his country's military has encircled and is operating inside Gaza City. Meanwhile, the United States has said that it would oppose the reoccupation of Gaza by Israel when the conflicts end. Israel had a military presence inside Gaza for many decades, but withdrew its troops in 2005. Prime Minister Netanyahu has said that Israel would take overall security responsibility for Gaza indefinitely. To find out more about Israel's plan for Gaza, the BBC's Julian Marshall spoke to someone at the heart of Israel decision-making, Ron Dermer, Israel's Minister of Strategic Affairs and a member of its war cabinet.
I think maybe there's some confusion that is worth clarifying. But the Prime Minister was not saying that Israel was going to reoccupy Gaza or Israel was going to govern Gaza. You know, governance requires an administration that we assume will be Palestinian. You'll have to have internal policing, and there's a question of who will do that. You'll have to deal with reconstruction and how that would be done. There's a question of the overriding security responsibility. That's what he was talking about, to ensure that in a post-Hamas Gaza, we don't have the reemergence of a terror threat from in Gaza. So who is going to do that action? Who is going to take the action if there's a new terrorist infrastructure that's being built? Who's going to go into Gaza and take it out? Who's going to do those operations? And that's the type of thing that he was talking about. Of course, you would hope that one day you wouldn't have to do that. But Israel left Gaza in 2005. We withdrew completely from the territory. We went back to the so-called 1967 line. Israel wasn't operating or doing any operations in Gaza, and we saw what happened over nearly 2 decades. They had built this terror state right on the southern part of Israel, and we saw the effects of this not only in round and round of violence every 2-3 years, but also on October 7th, this horrific massacre. So when he says overriding security responsibility, it's not about the reoccupation of Gaza. It's not about the governance of Gaza. It's just to ensure that Israel has that overriding responsibility to fight terrorism and to ensure that Gaza remains a demilitarized area.
Would Israel be amenable to the extension of the Palestinian Authority's control over Gaza?
Look, that's a question that is a matter of dispute in Israel and what should be the force. It's clear, I think, to the vast majority of Israelis that it has to be Palestinian. Whether the Palestinian Authority is the right body to do it, right now in the West Bank, they haven't shown their ability there to actively fight terrorism, which has actually forced Israel, because we have that overriding security responsibility there to go in and to root out these terror cells. And then there's the question, is it going to be a reformed and reconstituted Palestinian Authority? Because one of the problems we have, Julie, and it's very important for your listeners to understand that. They understand Hamas, I think, is a terror organization. And I think there's sympathy, not only for Israel in the wake of this horrific attack, but in Israel's legitimate right and even duty for self-defense. I don't think what people understand is an entire generation of young Palestinian children are being reared to hate Israel, to hate Jews, and they're basically being poisoned with the worst propaganda. Now, that poison was not only in Gaza, it's also in the West Bank. So I think we not only have to deal with a demilitarized Gaza, we have to deal with a de-radicalized Gaza. And is the Palestinian Authority, as it's constituted today, is it capable of doing that? I haven't seen any evidence. Now, will a new Palestinian leadership emerge after Hamas that could do it? I hope so, because that would be better for Israel, for the Palestinians, and for the future of peace.
Ron Dermer there, who is Israel Minister of Strategic Affairs, speaking to my colleague Julian Marshall.
Well, there has been some concern in capitals around the world about the lack of a plan for what does happen the day after the conflict between Israel and Hamas ends. It is completely unclear who will rebuild and then run the Gaza Strip. Well, I've been talking to one person who's come up with his own plan, Bob Silverman, who's a former US diplomat in the Middle East and is the editor